Stephen. So good to see you. Finally, I am getting to see you beyond the moderation gigs and I actually get to interview you. I think this is one of the best days of my life. I've been such an admirer and follower of your body of work, the books you've written. And most importantly, I think I must have told you this gazillion times. What I like about the frameworks that you've created or your talks is the fact that they are highly actionable and the fact that they're inundated with a lot of knowledge and conceptual depth. So thank you so much for making time for creativity notes, Stephen.
You're welcome, Ridhima. I'm delighted to be on this podcast. I love the name, Creativity Rules. And it's both the idea that there's rules to creativity, but also that once you get creativity, that rules, that creates opportunities in the marketplace. Yes. So it's a great delight to be with you too. Thank you.
So Stephen, let's get into it. The first question, and this is something that I've been nurturing to ask you ever since I've known you, is why you do what you do. What has led you to this point in your life and your career?
Yes. Well, it's interesting because I've kind of had two acts in my career. And the first act was what I did for the first 15 years, where my focus was on building an organization, running the organization as a business. And it started with my father. My father is Dr. Stephen R. Covey, who wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And so when I joined the Covey Leadership Center at a business school, I got my MBA from Harvard Business School, joined the Covey Leadership Center, and I focused on the business side initially. I focused on scaling the business, growing the business, building the team, building the culture, and building systems and processes, and really how to grow the business, run the business. And that was my primary focus. And it was somewhat by design because I'd gotten this MBA and I felt like I could add value there. And there was a need. We had lots of creativity going on in the company. My father was very creative and others. And I felt like I needed to bring some discipline and some structure to the thinking. So that was my first act that I did for about 15 years. And until we ran the Covey Leadership Center, we became the largest leadership development company in the world at the time. And then we did a merger where we merged our company, Covey Leadership Center, with Franklin Quest, who was our arch competitor. And suddenly these two companies that had been competing in the market for time management now were combined. And when we combined the companies, while both companies independently were really good and they had good people, good missions, good values, we nonetheless saw the world through a different lens. And when we combined, it was really difficult for the first couple of years. I mean, really difficult, where it was kind of a we, they. There was the Covey group, there was the Franklin group. And so here, good people with a good mission combined, and yet there was low trust. And we saw what happened when there was low trust. Everything slowed down. Everything cost more. Everything became politicized. And there really was a high cost to low trust. But then we became aware of this and we said, you know what, this is not acceptable. We've got to consciously work on building trust with each other and not let the fact that we had been competitors deter our ability to come together and to collaborate and to innovate. And so we focused on building trust intentionally through our credibility, through our behavior, through talking straight, through demonstrating respect, through listening first, through keeping commitments, and also especially through extending trust to each other. And we began to behave our way into greater trust. And when we built the trust, suddenly that changed everything. Now with higher trust, we were far more focused on our clients and not just internally focused. When we built the trust, suddenly we could collaborate in new and different ways. When we built the trust, we also could innovate and create in new and different ways. Our differences became strengths when we trusted each other. But without the trust, the differences kind of had divided us. But they became the source of our strength and of our creativity when we had trust as the agent to bring it together. And so we went from low trust to high trust, and that changed everything, not only in our culture, but in our performance, in our creativity and in innovation. And so it was from that whole experience, Ridhima, of experiencing this, building a great company at Covey Leadership Center separately, where we had a high trust team, high trust culture. Now we merged with another company, a very good company, but our arch competitor, and suddenly there's low trust, and seeing firsthand the high cost of low trust, and then focusing on building the trust as a new combined entity and going from low to high trust in a new entity and seeing how everything changed. It was from that whole experience that I finally said, aha, now I have found something that I want to say. And prior to this, I was more the business person executing my dad's ideas and other people's ideas around leadership, because I felt like I had not found my voice, my distinctiveness, what I wanted to say. But coming out of this experience, I saw firsthand the high cost of low trust. I also saw how trust was learnable, how you could move the needle on trust and increase it and grow it on purpose. And I saw how if you did that, it changed everything. So I came out of that and said, I know what I want to do now. I want to shift my focus to helping leaders and organizations build trust on purpose, intentionally, because I think we have underestimated the value of trust by a factor of 100. And I felt like trust was economic. You could put a financial value on it. I saw how trust changed everything in leadership. And I saw how trust was learnable, movable. And so I came into this saying, I want to focus my life on this. I felt like I found my voice. And so that's been the last 20 years of my career, really, as I moved towards around trust. But what was interesting is I didn't plan to do this. It emerged from my experience. It emerged from really my crucible, because I'd been the CEO of the Covey Leadership Center. And when we did the merger, suddenly half the people of the combined entity didn't trust me. And it wasn't because I'd done something wrong. It's just because I came from the competitor. And I saw firsthand the costs and the consequences of it. And it made me focus on deliberately trying to regain that trust. And so this whole experience was really eye-opening for me. And in it, I found my voice and I found my mission and my purpose. And I've been doing it ever since. And so that's kind of interesting, because the creativity was not planned.
Yeah.
The creativity emerged from my circumstances, including the lowest point when I felt like this was unfair. There's low trust, and yet I'd done nothing to have low trust other than be the CEO of the competitor. But it was at that low point that I said, we've got to change this. And because we succeeded in changing it, I came out of that and said, I want to tell others about this. Others are probably experiencing a similar thing. And I think that we need to talk about this more, talk about this differently, quantify trust, put a business case to trust, put a leadership case to trust, and then show how you can build it on purpose. And from that emerged the speed of trust. And
wow, I was blissfully unaware of this, Stephen.
Yeah.
So many of your videos talking about speed of trust, but this entire anecdote, I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah. See, and I do think it teaches us a lot about inspiration and a lot about creativity. that oftentimes it's serendipitous.
Yeah.
Oftentimes it flows out of crucibles, out of crises, out of difficult moments where suddenly we have to rethink everything.
Yeah.
And suddenly that opens up boundaries, and you become, what we were doing wasn't working. And I had to kind of put everything aside and rethink. And it was from that these insights poured into me, because I saw it, I experienced it. I didn't just think about it. I experienced it firsthand, both the good and the bad. And I think that made me better at writing about trust, because it would be one thing if I wrote about trust and all I'd seen was high trust and building high trust teams and cultures. But I think I wrote far more persuasively and with far more credibility, because I'd also seen low trust and experienced it.
Yeah.
And I saw how we moved the needle from low to high, and how that was possible too.
So, Stephen, I want to ask you one thing. Like you said, you were the CEO, you were a businessman at Covey Leadership Center, and then
Right.
this merger happened. And you also said at that point you were not thinking about that this is my creativity, this is what I got to do. I want to know from you, what were the telltale signs that you got when you were undergoing those crucibles, which gave you this conviction, you know what, I have good enough experience now to actually write a book and say, I know this entire gamut of trust. How did you get that conviction? Because we all go through crucibles, we all amass experiences, but then there is this thing called creative confidence. I don't feel confident that I can pull it off. So, how did you build that conviction? Because from a businessman, which you still are, but to becoming a full time author, speaker, I'm sure that journey must have not been an easy one.
Right. No, it wasn't an easy one. And in fact, I'd been quite reluctant
Really?
to take the journey, because partly because I would be following in my father's footsteps, and my father was the author of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And how are you ever going to beat that? You can't, right? It sold 40 million copies. And so that was a little intimidating to me to have his same name. I didn't want to just be a poor man's version of that. And so that's why the business acumen side was, I felt, my sweet spot. But what gave me the confidence to move forward? So prior to this, I'd thought about, maybe, even when I was on the business side, I thought about maybe I should write a little, maybe I should speak a little, but I had not found what I wanted to say yet. I just felt like all I would be doing is regurgitating what others had said, and I didn't have anything distinctive. What gave me the confidence was when we had the success in going from low trust in this combined entity to high trust, when we actually moved the needle, when we saw progress and success, and I saw the difference, the night and day difference between the two, and that I'd been part of helping to lead that. And it was from that having that success gave me confidence that, you know what, this is learnable, it's doable. And yet I looked out there, and most of the literature on trust was either too academic, too theoretical, or too simplistic, just too simplistic, not simple, but simplistic, like trust everyone, and not at all rigorous, and so kind of on either extreme, too theoretical, too simplistic. And I felt like there is a need for a practical, tangible approach to building trust, why it matters, and how to do it. And I felt like I could fill that need, and that people needed that. And the fact that my telltale sign was I'd seen success. I'd seen the depths of failure, and I'd seen the heights of success in this. And so I felt confident that this worked. And I also felt like I found my voice. And how that happens might be different for everyone. But maybe it was just simply the fact that we had such a turnaround, and also the fact that I felt like most of the stuff on trust was either too academic, too simplistic, and that there was a need for this.
So you observed intently. It was no accident. You actually also observed what existed in that arena.
Yes, I kind of looked around and I realized and that's where I say we are underestimating trust by a factor of 100. I mean, no one is going to argue with trust, right? I've never found anyone, Ridhima, that says I'm against trust. I'm not in favor of it. No, everyone is in favor of trust, but still, for so many, it's just seen as a soft, nice to have social virtue, a good thing, a positive thing, but not truly an economic driver. But I saw the economics of trust and of distrust, and I saw how that impacted everything. And so I became convinced that this was vital, and yet it was underrepresented. And somewhere in there, it just spoke to me to where I felt like I found what I want to say. And once I felt I found what I wanted to say, it gave me courage to move forward and not to worry about trying to be as good as my father, because I accepted that that's not my goal. My goal was to try to find my purpose and to express it. Once I learned about this trust, that this was really compelling to me. And so that was a process. It was as much discovery as it was creation.
I like that word, as much discovery as it was creation. Stephen, they say every master was once an amateur. And I'm sure as you transitioned into this entire arena of trust, from writing a book to doing these keynotes, you must have made some mistakes, even though you must have been done a lot of preparation. In the initial phase, what did those mistakes look like? And did it discourage you from taking the next step? Because one of the things which acts as a hindrance in our journey of creativity is the fear of failure. And especially for you, you had this accomplished career. So the more successful you get, that failure feeling rents in even more. So how did you go about just completely dampening that voice and focusing on your journey?
Yeah, this is a good question. Once I became clear that trust was something I wanted to do, now I had to shift to new and develop new skills.
Yeah.
And for example, I had to learn to give presentations and to speak. I'd been on the business side. I'd done company presentations, but not client presentations and client speaking. And here I'd achieved a high level of really business success and business acumen as a leader, but now I'm starting from scratch as a speaker, as a presenter. And I had good ideas, but I had to learn the skills. And so that took some time. And I had to be willing to fail and to learn and to see that as part of the process, part of the journey, and not to have that discourage me. And that's easier said than done.
Yeah.
But what gave me the strength to do it was I just came back time and again to what I felt my purpose was, which is there is a great need for trust. And I'm getting better and better at presenting this, but I have to be willing to not be perfect at this and to fail even. I'll never forget one time I gave a presentation and I had some of my team there because they knew I was working on writing the book, The Speed of Trust. And I was going to present the ideas really for one of the first times. And so my team was there to kind of give me feedback and coach me. And my presentation was at best, it was okay. It was certainly not great. it wasn't horrible, but at best it was just so-so. And so afterwards, my team gave me all this advice of things I needed to do differently and better. And again, I'm learning how to do this. And I wrote down from their advice 43 different things I needed to do and differently. And so the next speech I went out and gave, Ridhima, I had 43 things in mind. And that one was worse than the last one because I was all over the map thinking about all these things of make sure I do, different techniques of how I would speak and then, how I would engage people or not. But there was 43 things. How do you remember that? And it was just too much.
Yeah.
It was too much. And so that one really didn't work. And that was worse than the last one. And I came away from that saying, you know what? I can't have 43 things. What do I need to work on? And I became clear. I need to make sure I bring energy, excitement, and passion to my topic. I need to connect with people face to face, eye to eye. I need to tell great stories. And I need to make this practical and actionable. And I'm going to focus on those 4 things. And focusing on 4 things instead of 43 things, I became much better, especially because I could control how much passion I brought to it. I could really focus on connecting with people. I could spend time to make sure I didn't just teach content, but I told stories.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And then I could try to make sure that I brought action and practice to it. And so suddenly I got better and better and better and better. And I'm still trying to get better, but I've gotten a lot better. But I had to be willing to fail and to make mistakes. And it was difficult because it's hard. And especially when you achieved a high level of competency in another arena, and now you're learning a whole new area. And for me, it was speaking and doing that type of thing. It wasn't me not knowing the ideas. I knew the ideas. I just needed to learn how best to communicate the ideas. And that was a new skill for me. So I had to kind of go through the journey. And the key to it, though, is I had to kind of be willing to fail and to be able to learn from it and bounce back. And that's so critical for creativity and innovation, is the willingness to fail. And in Silicon Valley, they're calling this fail fast, fail forward, fail often, but learn faster. And because if we're not willing to fail, we won't innovate, we won't create. And so again, I even got better as a presenter because I failed, and I realized, why did I fail? Because I didn't connect with people, or I didn't tell stories, or I didn't make it actionable. I learned these things, but I learned them because I failed and I didn't do them. And that was hard. So those are some of the things that were very real for me.
Thank you, Stephen, for giving that context. Stephen, typically moving from a business role to speaker, author, being the influencer that you are, what were the things that you had to unlearn from your previous stint? And what were you spoke about the new skills, like the presentation, communicate ideas, but there must have been certain skills which you had to unlearn. And unlearning things are a journey of their own. So in your journey, what are the things that you needed to let go of or unlearn them in some way or the other?
Probably to not get bogged down in the complexity. And I learned that there's a distinction between simplistic and simple. And Oliver Wendell Holmes said this. He said, I wouldn't give a fig for the simplicity on the near side of complexity, but I would give my life for the simplicity on the far side of complexity. So the whole idea is this, is that if something originally starts as just being simplistic, because it hasn't waded through the complexity, that's not going to be robust enough. There's not going to be enough rigor to it without having waded through complexity. That will be seen as simplistic. But if you can go through the complexity and come out the other side and simplify it again, having gone through the complexity, then that's simple, a simplicity on the far side. And that's what's really valuable. And so in my prior role, I'd often gotten deep into the complexity and often never emerged out of it in this simplicity. Now, sometimes I did, but it was very easy for me to just get, entrenched in the complexity of management. Yeah. And I needed to unlearn how to not let the management mindset dominate my thinking, but to move out of that into a simple framework and a simple process, having paid the price of working through the complexity. And so that was kind of new for me. Some of the things I had to unlearn, and some of that would have been very valuable had I learned that when I was in the management role as well, because I would have been more effective as a leader and as a manager if I also would have gone through this complexity and come out of the other side with more simplicity. But it was easier to get rewarded for being good at the complexity when I was doing the management. But that would be too confusing in presenting with an audience. And so that was something. There was a number of things I'm sure that I had to learn, including, I guess what I just said earlier, that I'd kind of seen as failure as being bad.
Yeah.
And I had to unlearn that and see failure as growth. And that was kind of a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Because before, when I was managing things, I wanted to make sure that we didn't have too much failure. And then when I went to this new role, I realized the only way I'm going to get better is I got to fail and grow. So that was a paradigm shift.
Stephen, I want to know from you, from your life journey, both as an entrepreneur, now as an author and influencer and a speaker, even for people who work in corporate world, who are executives, who are professionals, what is the role of creativity in career growth and progress from your lens, Stephen?
Well, I think that creativity is critical in our world because it can be such a differentiator. And I believe that you can bring some level of creativity to almost any role in almost any organization. Now, I will acknowledge there might be some jobs where people don't want you to be creative, and they want you to kind of paint by the numbers, so to speak, and follow the guidelines and the like. And that might be true, but still, even then, you can bring a sense of creativity to building relationships, to help building a team, even if there's a lot of prescribed process to follow.
Sure.
And so, but I think that the creativity is part of what makes us human, and there's great opportunities through creativity to differentiate and to create, the very word, and to innovate. But one of the key things is that we need to recognize that part of where the innovation will come from is when there are differences of how we view the world. And that's what happened with the Franklin Covey merger. When we learned to value the differences and trust each other, then those differences were the source of innovation. But when we didn't have the trust for each other, the differences sometimes were divisive.
Yeah.
So trust is what helps differences be seen as strengths and become the source of innovation.
Absolutely.
There's an innovation specialist named Robert Porter Lynch who actually puts it this way. He said, innovation flourishes when there's a collision of differences in an environment of trust. And so by innovation, I think that's creativity, and that's part of what's going to keep us relevant in a changing world. Everything's changing so fast. The world is changing, so we got to constantly stay relevant, constantly recreate ourselves, reinvent ourselves. That's creativity. That's innovation, and to stay relevant. Otherwise, without that, we could become less and less relevant over time, or sometimes almost overnight, because there might be a disruptive technology that comes in and disrupts the entire game. And how we're going to compete with that. And so sometimes, the need for recreation, reinvention is important. So there's continuous improvement on one end, always trying to get better, to complete reinvention on the other end, and everything in between. And creativity, innovation is all part of those processes.
Yes. So the bottom line for me is that creativity in the long run is the lever of relevance in the landscape of ever-changing things. And I really like this quote that you said, innovation flourishes when there is collision of differences in the environment of trust. I think that aptly describes what is the importance of trust in the journey of innovation. Talking about trust and innovation, Stephen, you're coming up with this new book called Trust and Inspire. It looks really promising and exciting. So yes, and the cover looks really splendid, amazing. I like the color scheme. Tell us about this book. What I heard in one of your conversation, it's a distill of ideas that have been marinating in your mind for the last 15 years. So 15 years is what it took for this book to see the light of the day. So please tell us what inspired you, what led to this book, how is it different from Speed of Trust, and what can the readers expect from a book like this? What kind of questions will get answered?
Yeah, so this book is a leadership book. It's also a book about people, and the whole premise of this is that the world has changed and is changing all around us, and yet our leadership hasn't kept pace with the changing world. We're still operating too much from kind of the old style of leadership, what we might call command and control. And what's happened is we've become better. We've become better at it, more sophisticated, more advanced, what I call enlightened command and control. So that's better, but we really haven't shifted our paradigm of how we view people and how we view leadership. Trust and Inspire is in juxtaposition to command and control and to this enlightened command and control. It's a new way to lead in a new world. And since the world has changed so much, you think about it, through technology, it's changed. Through the nature of work itself, it's become far more collaborative, more creative, more interdependent than ever before. The workplace has changed, especially coming out of the pandemic. Work from home, work from anywhere, remote work, hybrid work, intentionally flexible work. The workforce has changed with all these new generations at work, so many generations, a huge amount of diversity. And we've got so much choice, so many options today. So all of those forces of change have put a premium on two key things. The first is the need for teams and organizations to build a high trust culture so that they inspire the best people and bring out the best in people. I call that winning in the workplace through a high trust culture that inspires. And then we have a great need to what we've been talking about, to collaborate and innovate so we stay relevant in a changing world. And I call that winning in the marketplace. And we need to do both, win in the workplace, win in the marketplace. And the sequence matters. If we really want to win in the marketplace through collaboration and innovation, we've got to first win in the workplace by building a high trust culture that inspires so that we can attract, retain, and engage the best people and bring out the best in people. Trust and Inspire is the way that we need to lead in this new world in order to win in the workplace, win in the marketplace. You can't command and control your way to a great culture that inspires. You can't command and control your way to collaboration and innovation. Trust and Inspire is a whole new way of leading. So it's a leadership book that has a holistic view of people and sees greatness inside of people. And the idea that our job as a leader is to unleash the greatness, not to try to control people or contain them, but to unleash their greatness and to see them as whole people, body, heart, mind, spirit. So our job as a leader is to inspire, not merely to motivate. And that's the idea behind this book, is a new way to lead in a new world. Or if I could put it another way, in a new world of work, it requires a new way to lead. And the old model, even a more advanced, sophisticated version of an enlightened command and control, is not going to work in this new world of work. But Trust and Inspire, that you model, you trust, you inspire people, that people are drawn to that. They'll want to be a part of it, and they'll bring out the best in them. They'll stay with you, they'll perform better, and you'll also be able to collaborate and innovate in new and different ways to stay relevant. And that's so it's really ultimately all about relevance in a new world. And this is a new way to lead. And we need it, because for all of our progress, still the vast majority are still trapped in the old command and control model, just a more enlightened version of it. That's the idea behind the book.
Lovely. Really good to hear the entire process that you just delineated. So, Stephen, typically, what is the process that you deploy when you are writing a book? Because I'm sure you have all these ideas in your mind, and then to translate them from your mind space to your head space to your paper place or somewhere where you can see it, it must be a journey of their own. So, is it like you have these moments of euphoria, the aha moment where you write, then you're not writing for a few days? How does that work for you?
Yeah. Well, for me, it works with ideas that come, but then I test it and try it, experiment with clients, and learn and get feedback and see what resonates, what connects, and then from that come more ideas. And I also work with the team. If you notice on the book cover, there's 3 people named that are collaborators with me, and these co-authors, David Casperson, McKinley Covey, who's my daughter, and Gary Judd. And they are tremendous collaborators with me together, where we collaborate around these ideas, and then we test it with clients. And
everything is
learn.
tried, trusted, practical. It's not just an academic idea.
Absolutely. And this whole idea of trust and inspire, because what this book is going to do as well is just like what we did with Speed of Trust was we made trust a learnable skill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What this book is going to do as well is make inspiring others a learnable skill. And the idea that everyone can inspire. It's not just for the charismatic. And too often we've equated inspiration with charisma.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thinking, where we say, well, how can I possibly inspire? I'm not charismatic. No. Everyone can inspire. It's a learnable skill. It's not just for the charismatic. In fact, I would say this. I know a lot of people who are charismatic, but who are not inspiring. And I know other people who no one would necessarily describe as charismatic, but who are extraordinarily inspiring because of who they are, because of how they lead, because of how they connect with people and connect people to purpose. So it has nothing to do with charisma. It has everything to do with connection, connecting with people through caring and belonging, and connecting people to purpose, to meaning, and to contribution. And this is where everything is going, Ridhima. In our world, we're going to inspiration. It's the next frontier of engagement, the next level of engagement. So I like to put it this way: inspiration is the new engagement, and to have people that are inspired, not just motivated. Motivation is extrinsic, external. Inspiration is intrinsic, it's internal. And so motivation is done through command and control, through carrot and stick and rewards. Inspiration means, it comes from the Latin term inspirare, which means to breathe life into. So I breathe life into something and ignite the fire that's within. And that can burn on for years without having to have constant external stimuli. And so people don't want to be managed. People want to be led. They want to be trusted. They want to be inspired, and even more than merely motivated. So that's the idea that inspiring others is learnable, trusting others is learnable, and this is a new way to lead. It's all around the kind of leadership that's going to be relevant in this changing world. And there's three key things to it: you model, you trust, and you inspire. Modeling is who you are. Trusting is how you lead. Inspiring is connecting to why at the personal level and then at the work level, why it matters, purpose, meaning, contribution. And it's all learnable. And so that's the whole idea, is to say, look, we are not our style. We can change our style and become better at leading in our new world of work. And it's pretty exciting. And so I know it resonates with people, because I'm not just writing this in a vacuum. We're testing this, we're trying this, we're working with clients, and they're responding to it. And they're saying, this is really valuable. And we're building a high trust culture that inspires our people. And we're getting better results because of that. And we're having a happier, more engaged, more energized workforce and culture because of it. And that enables us to get more results. It becomes a virtuous upward spiral. And that's exciting. So that's why I'm so happy and excited about this book, because I'm confident it resonates with people, because it's a product of working with people and with organizations and getting this to where it's at.
And when is it getting out? Is it already available in the market? What's the date like?
The official publishing date is April 5th, 2022, but it is available right now for pre-order on online bookstores anywhere. So it's available right now to pre-order. You probably won't receive your book until April 5th, but you can go ahead and pre-order it now.
So you've got some pre-orders already, because I think this will come very handy to some of my clients who are leading huge organizations, and for them to motivate everyone individually is not possible. But like you said, inspiring is intrinsic. So I think it will be a tremendous value add for them that can in the long run lead to business impact. So thank you so much for penning down this book, Stephen. Thank you very much.
You are welcome. And thanks for sharing it with our viewers and our listeners. It's exciting.
Absolutely, it is exciting, and believe you me, I was talking to Gautam, who the right selection team, who organizes all these masterclasses for you in India. I said we need to have Stephen's masterclasses every quarter, because it resonates and it relates to people at that level. And I'm sure with this book, you're going to stoke a different nerve in people, and it's going to lead to tremendous business impact. So thank you for taking the time out for writing this book, Stephen. And
you're welcome. Can I add one piece? What
yes.
I like most about this book is that you can apply it to become a trust and inspire leader. You start by becoming a trust and inspire person. And you can apply it to any and every dimension of life. So one of our endorsers, her name is Beth Ford, and she's the CEO of Land O'Lakes, a big dairy and cooperative in the United States, huge company. And she read it and she offered a very nice endorsement. You'll see it in the book. But then she wrote me a personal note and said, Stephen, I love this. This is going to help my leadership enormously, because I've got a new way of thinking about how to lead in this new world of work. And she said, even given that, the most valuable thing about this book was how it gave me a lens into my role as a mother to my 3 children.
Wow.
Because I've been, it's very easy to fall into a command and control. And this gives me a lens around how I can help unleash their greatness. The subtitle of the book is How Truly Great Leaders Unleash Greatness in Others. And A parent is a leader, and to unleash the greatness in their children. A teacher is a leader to unleash the greatness in their students. So this is not just leadership in a management role. It is the idea that leadership is a choice everyone has in any walk of life. You lead your life, you lead your home, your family, your community. All of us can lead. Anyone can be a leader. And this is a lens through which to view that. And so that's the most satisfying thing to me, is to hear responses like that, and here's a CEO saying this was extremely valuable for me as a CEO, and even more valuable for me as a parent. That was exciting to hear. And it's really true. Trust and Inspire is a way of approaching life and leadership and parenting and communities. And it's what we need in our world today. We live in a world that's dangerously low in both trust and inspiration.
And inspiration. I second that very strongly. All the listeners and viewers of Creativity Rules, I'll put the link of where you can pre-order the book in the comment section. If you've been following Creativity Rules, if you have some amount of trust in the content that I put out there, please ensure that you pre-order this maverick of a book called Trust and Inspire. On this note, Stephen, as we come towards the culmination of Creativity Rules, I want to say a big thank you to you for making time for this conversation. Thank you so much, despite the time difference. And I think I got a glimpse of a very different side of yours, which I usually don't see in masterclass, where we got up close and personal about what led you to choose trust at that arena where you wanted to create impact. And like I said at the onset of our conversation, Stephen, I want you to be at your candor best, and I think you have outdone yourself. So thank you for being so candid and so frank, telling us the entire journey of how you made a transition from a businessman to a author, speaker, and influencer of such disproportionate scale, Stephen. My learning comes, which I think really resonated with me, is the second half of conversation where you said the entire premise of this book called Trust and Inspire is to get the best of people, to win through people and win in the place through them. And the fact that motivation is not enough, it is inspiring them, because inspiration is intrinsic, that matters. I also like that quote that innovation flourishes when there is collision of difference of opinion in an environment of trust. I liked your anecdote on how, when your one of the presentations went awry, you got 43 different inputs, and the second performance went a notch down. And from there, you got this learning that you need to engage people more, be more energetic, tell stories, and disseminate practical, actionable for people to ingest and get a glimpse of that. One of my favorite quotes of your session, Stephen, is always that trust is an economic driver. It's not a soft skill. And I remember in one of the PPTs, you also show a cat to make your point that trust is not a soft skill. It's not a mushy skill. So I think that got illuminated here also. And what I like the most is the authenticity with which you speak, Stephen. So, when you say that I have experimented with all these frameworks, it gets illuminated through your personality that you must have experimented with all of them. So thank you so much, Stephen, for making time. I'm getting out of this conversation really enriched, and I think you have given our listeners and viewers a very important facet, that how in the journey of building creativity, trust is also an important facet. So thank you very much for making time for this conversation, Stephen.
You're welcome, Ridhima. I'm happy to have had this with you. And I agree with that last point of, in the journey toward creativity, I invite all our listeners, all our viewers, see trust as truly foundational, both yourself, the self-trust, see, the trust you have in yourself will give you the confidence to take a risk, the confidence to make a mistake and fail, and to learn and to bounce back, because there's some level of self-trust. But also, as you work with others, when there's trust in those relationships, that's when your differences become your strengths and become the source of innovation. So the trust matters there. And one last area is that the trust is what will give people on a team or in a culture, when there's trust, the courage to take that risk and make a mistake when they know that people have their back.
Absolutely. Yes.
And people are far more likely to take a responsible risk in a high trust culture. The data shows they're 32 times more likely to take a responsible risk and 11 times more likely to innovate. That means to create 11 times higher in a high trust culture than a low trust culture.
Mm.
And it's because they're 32 times more likely to take a responsible risk. In a low trust culture, you just won't do it.
Mm.
It's just too costly, too risky, too frightening. And so trust is vital to the entire creativity journey, personally and organizationally. And so it's not the only thing. There's a lot of other things that you're talking about on creativity rules, different elements, aspects of it. I'm just adding to this discussion trust, starting with yourself, your own self-trust, team
Yes.
trust, organizational trust, as truly a differentiator, as a performance multiplier toward great creativity.
That's a pertinent point. I think what people tell most often in creativity is that you need to give your team freedom to express, to experiment. But that leeway of giving freedom is directly proportional to the extent of trust that you extend to them. So I think somewhere what they want to say is trust, and we code it in a very sugar coated way by saying freedom. So I think it is what it is. So thank you so much, Stephen, for coming on Creativity Rules and enlightening us in so many ways.